Okay, a very warm welcome to another episode of Audiovisual Cultures. I am very excited to have several guests today. It's been a while since we had a panel, and I'm joined by some folks who are involved with Odd-o-Ts Entertainment. I hope I'm saying that right. I'm sure I'll be corrected in a moment if I'm not. And they faced a really massive shift, like so many of us, in how they've had to operate due to the pandemic. And they moved from a wide range of live events onto online productions, including virtual escape rooms, which I'm very excited to hear all about. And so let's first of all get all the voices attached to names. So I'm going to start with Todd and we'll go around everybody and do some introductions. So beginning with you, Todd, if I could please ask you to tell us your name and your role in the company. And it'd be good to hear where everybody is in the world as well, if that's all right.
That sounds great. Thanks so much for having us here on the podcast. My name is Todd Zimmerman, and I'm the producer of Odd-o-Ts Entertainment. And I'm excited to share what we've been doing online because I think for your listeners, your viewers, they have an opportunity for a chance to experience that. So we'll be talking quite heavily, I think, today about the secret library and the many iterations that are coming from that. So we're looking forward to this conversation.
Brilliant. Thank you, Todd. And Katrina, could I come to you next?
Absolutely. My name's Katrina Michaels. I'm an actor based in New York City, although originally from London, and I'm one of the performers in the Secret Library.
Brill, thank you. And Deborah, what about you?
Sure. I'm Debra Beardsley. I'm also in Orlando, close to Todd. And I am the project manager for the Secret Library, and I work for Odd-o-Ts. So I have I've been involved with a lot of kind of the design elements behind the scenes and things. So excited to share that process because it's all new when we go virtual.
Okay, that's brilliant. That sets us up for quite a lot of stuff to get through. So I think it might be good to begin with. We'll come to the virtual side of things in a moment, but it'd be great to hear more about how all of you were having to work before all of the world ended and things. So
the world didn't end, it just changed. So who was it? Jeff Goldblum, he says nature finds a way, right? And so that's what we're doing. So for our company, and myself included, before the world changed and adapted, we were producing a lot of live shows for theme parks across the United States, as well as performing arts centers. We have all kinds of different shows that we've been doing, and we keep about 100 to 150 performers working throughout the year live in all of those different venues. So it was quite a shock to us, of course, when everything shut down and continues to be shut down for live performances for much of the world. So we've been trying to find a way to obviously bring those online, but we were enjoying ourselves. And for us, it's about a paycheck, just like it is for everybody else, but it's more than that, because when you're interacting with the audience, or you hear the applause, or you hear the laughter, it really feeds our soul. So, and we're lucky enough that it feeds our pocketbook as well, that we're able to make our living as performers. But it's also because I might even say a little bit ego that we just like to hear, hey, you're doing a great job.
Brilliant, thanks. Katrina, what were you working on before?
So I come from a in-person live theatre background. I work predominantly on the regional scenes. While I'm based in New York, a lot of the auditions are in New York, and then you'll do a contract in Colorado for 5 months, or you'll go to Rhode Island for 2 months. And I do an eclectic mix of, I trained in musical theatre, but I do a lot of Shakespeare as well. I love like contemporary gritty dramas. Weirdly, actually, when the pandemic hit, my next play was a dystopian medical drama. And so I was like, life imitating art in the worst possible way. For a while, I was like, well, at least I'm doing some great background research for when the show happens. Sadly, it got delayed it got postponed for a year, and just officially got cancelled for next summer. So for me, the thing I love about theatre is that it is such a collaboration with an audience, and that you tell a story together. There's that direct feedback. And that was something I was really craving. How do I still connect and share in stories? I've been doing a lot of voiceover, a lot of audiobooks, but that's me sitting in a booth. And I was fortunate, even though I'm based in New York City, I've worked in Orlando Shakespeare, and I know a lot of people in that environment. And so this audition popped up, and the fact that there is this kind of immersive element that I get to see the audience. You know, when I'm singing, I play several instruments in the show, and I get to kind of have this space where I get to share in song and story with an audience right there. And that was an element that was really exciting to me, that in a world that has kind of an element of disconnect, you know, with your fellow human being, that this show can inspire that human connection.
Oh, that sounds brilliant. Thank you. And Deborah, what were you working on before everything?
Sure. So immediately before this, I was doing theater administration at a local community theater here in Central Florida. It was a 500-seat theater. It is a 500-seat theater. It's still there. And, you know, obviously they've been impacted greatly by the pandemic, just with all of the capacity limitations and things. So I ended up kind of refinding my love for immersive theater. I actually was in New York City for about 6 years, and I worked with an immersive theater company up there. And it's always been a passion of mine to look into different ways of storytelling. You know, the world right now wants to be involved and have, you know, make a decision about everything. Something as simple as like American Idol, you can vote from your phone, you know, and who's the next winner? Like, everybody wants to be involved. So finding new ways to tell stories and bring people into that, I thought was always a really cool concept. So, you know, when I came down to New York, I actually started an escape room, because I wanted to be able to integrate theater actors into that, and kind of an element of storytelling into a gameplay. You know, for reasons of being a small business, mom and pop shop, you know, that ended up running its course. But the love is still there. So during the pandemic, you know, we had so much time for reflection. It was like, you know what, I would love to do something like this. And that's when literally Todd called me and said, hey, I want to do something online. And this was born. So
fantastic. Well, so I'm hearing a lot about immersive theatre, and I think you've set us up really beautifully there, Deborah, to then talk a bit about the Secret Library and explore that a little bit and see, right, what were the origins of that? Where did that come from? And how do you reproduce that immersive experience for an audience in an online setting? So Todd, would you like to take us through, right, how did that begin?
Right. So again, everything shut down, and we took a few weeks to decompress, and then said, you know, what we've always wanted to do is an immersive experience. And it's very cost prohibitive. And obviously I always come back to the cost of being the producer, but it's hard to spend the money to, you know, build out a building or an outdoor facility that really makes you feel like you're immersed into something. And so we said, well, if we can't do that physically, how can we do that virtually? And I just actually gave a speech on this the other day to a conference about immersive experiences online. And it really is virtually impossible, because when you are performing to a camera, people may feel that they're coming into your world, but you're sitting there and everything that's facing back at you, right? So you have a computer screen facing back at you. I'm sitting in my office, so I have stacks of paperwork in front of me. My dog's at my ankle right now. So we were having a challenge trying to create that immersive feel. So as we took a look at the Secret Library, what we wanted to do is find something that could be accessed from anywhere in the world. You know, that did have a mysticism to it, but we had to set it in reality, because to make you immersed into something, you had to feel like those surroundings were natural wherever you were. So for us, it was, we talked about, how do we do this? Do we do something cool and like, oh, we're going to do a Wild West show, or because we're using computers, let's go and set it in the future, and maybe we're going through space, and this is the only way we can communicate is through these TV screens. And then we said, you know what? That's not going to feel immersive. What can we do that is going to speak to people on that personal level, that's going to put them in a situation where we can talk about their actual lives right now, and then twist it to take them into that mysticism. And that's where the Secret Library was born, something that is what we say is the archive that holds all the records of humanity, kind of like the Akashic record if you look into some of the New Age wisdom, where all of those stories of humanity are there. And that way we could tell different stories. To touch on what Katrina said, we are storytellers. So we can tell different stories because a library contains all of this knowledge, and we can go in multiple different directions. And, we'll talk about this in just a little bit, but we have had, sequels, and now we're working on a prequel, and different iterations that come from that with all kinds of different formats. So we're able to appeal to a wide audience.
Wow. Is that the Secret Library behind you in your backdrop there?
A library.
Oh.
Not the library.
I don't think there's enough magic going on behind me for it to be the Secret Library, but
You gotta change your green screen effects. Give some.
I know, right?
Fantastic. And Katrina, how has it been for you trying to be a performer in immersive theatre and then moving into a space? And was that the sort of thing you were doing before? Were you ever acting in game spaces as well, as Deborah was saying? And then or is that something you've moved into now?
So I have some background in immersive theatre. I did a show. It was a show for children, in which the idea behind it was that it was the kind of brainchild of both an educational space, but also a kind of choose your own adventure, and that they can kind of take ownership over it. And with kids, you really learn to think on your feet, especially in a domain that gives them that permission. And there were certain lines that triggered certain tech and certain lighting and certain projections and puppeteering entrances. But then the in-between was often very fluid because you're basing off what they're giving you. And so in the same way, in the Secret Library, there is this theater element in that, we rehearsed scenes and we have set characters, but everything shifts based on the audience you're interacting with and how they want to, they kind of take ownership of what the experience is. And so getting to respond to that and like feeling solid enough in like, what is the world of the story we're telling? What's the world of my character? What are the options available to me? But how can I go down a different route because that's the route they want to go down? And that's the cool thing. It's almost like you're giving the joystick to the audience. And like that kind of, there's a level of trust and a level of play in that, which I think is so unique to immersive theatre, to games, of that it really lets the audience be in control of the experience. And so as an actor, that's so exciting because it fundamentally means every single show is going to be completely different and they're going to keep you on your toes. We've been doing, the first incarnation of the Secret Library since we started rehearsing end of August and, opened in September. So we've been doing this together for a while and every single show is different. And that I think is the real magic there.
Wow.
Katrina, you said something about, the audience has a choice. And I think, not to jump in and interrupt, but I'd like to hear your perspective on a couple of things. And let me preface it with, when we created this to really give it that immersive experience, we asked all of our performers to not only, bring their characters to life, but bring their characters to reality, in the fact that we asked for, Facebook pages to be created, or Instagram accounts, or LinkedIn, or, we wanted to give them an online presence that our audience could go and find these characters in the real world. Each of their characters has a website that is dedicated to their character's profession or backstory. And so for those audience members that want to really kind of go down the rabbit hole or really explore, there are opportunities to find hints of these characters living on the internet. So, and I know, Katrina, you've got some fun stories of guests that have reached out to you, but I want you to speak, if you can, on the creation process of trying to help build this character, not just, when you were on stage for that hour and a half, but that lives in the real world.
Sure. I mean, it was a fascinating experience for me because I'm used to the reverse of, constructing my character based on the clues in the text and tailoring that to the text. Well, in this case, I'm creating the text. The text is mirroring. It's a flip of that kind of process. But the exciting thing about being engaged in that creation is that you know the material so well. My character works at a bar and I can rattle off the drinks menu and when in doubt, it gives extra fodder to rely on. And I had a lot of fun. My bar is a literary themed bar, so I got to come up with the most terribly punny names, such as a George R.R. Martini or a picture of Dorian Grey Goose. Frankenstein, they're all terrible, and I have so much fun. And so then I can make a game throughout the show of kind of assigning a signature cocktail to a guest, and that material at hand to kind of go back to is fun. And it is interesting having this online presence with the character. I've had people reach out to me through my character Maggie's Instagram. And they genuinely they think I am Maggie, and there are elements of me in Maggie, but I'm not a bartender musician on the low side. I know, but it's really someone was asking when my next gig was, and I was like, I mean, I'm performing virtually from my apartment. That's my gig. But it is funny how it's fabulous. It states how much they invested and believed in the world. And I think having those tie-ins to, we're all so connected on social media and things, and having this character have those elements as well grounds them as a human. And I've had conversation. One of the videos on my character's Instagram is me playing accordion, and I've had people reach out to me asking about the accordion, which I will always happily talk about. So it's a great way to connect, and a fun added. It creates another layer of kind of immersion of that it integrates in that technology even beyond the show.
Sorry, I hijacked that a little bit, Deb, because I know that you wanted to talk about immersive too, and the fact that
please.
that what you brought to the table from your time in New York and the escape room, I think, are really important. So I just jumped in, but I was like, oh, Katrina said something.
No, I'm fascinated actually. That this was actually one of the things, is being able to talk to the performers too, because we had a really robust writing team when we were first coming up with this. I mean, we all kind of sat around a table or sat in Zoom meetings, just trying to nail down the concept, nail down the story. We had 30 plot points that came and went, and then the amount of research. We have an entire tome that talks about all of these libraries, these historical libraries that are actual places, that had actual significance in history. And we had to pull all of that material just so that we could give that tome to the performers, so that way they had that fodder to keep pulling from as well. But we didn't just create, Todd and I, we didn't just create this. It was such a collaborative effort. We were getting materials every day. I remember, we had, our writing team would send us a draft of one scene, while at the same time, somebody would send me a draft, a character, Katrina would send me the bar menu, and then the next day somebody else would send me a song. I think Katrina even wrote an entire song.
I wrote one song, which it had a clue. It fell by the wayside as we changed the gameplay in rehearsal. But I had one song with that, and then there's another song my character was linked to another one who's a history teacher, and I made a ditty that was a mnemonic device about the Ptolemaic Empire, which, I mean,
it's incredible.
I will say, for a song all about murder and incest, it's done on the ukulele, so it's pretty charming, I will say.
You know, and during the pandemic, which has been such a time of like, you know, we've all had to go inside of our bubble, right? A lot of us were missing that creative outlet. So I think that pulling in all of these performers and whatnot too, it allowed everybody to kind of find a quick creative outlet, you know, in a time where we're all very frustrated because we can't live our lives as normally as we want, right? So, you know, I don't even think we tasked people with some of the stuff that got created. You know, I just said, hey, could you write, you know, could you have a little ditty? Because I think that Maggie, you know, I think Katrina, your character and this other character, they know each other and they went to school together or something, you know, and next day I have a, you know, page long, you know, 12 verses of the Ptolemaic Empire, you know, so like it really gave us all a chance to be really creative, you know, and kind of push the boundaries of how can we keep telling stories in a new and imaginative way and just make everybody laugh, because everything is so 2020 right now. So just giving everybody that outlet, that opportunity has been, you know, has been wonderful.
And you know, you both hit on something, and Paul, I'm just completely hijacking this whole conversation.
It's completely fine, Todd. You're making my job so easy. I don't mind at all.
You know, as a producer and director, I get accused of monopolizing the time quite often. So I'm good. I'm just going to, you know, lean into it.
Please,
anyhow.
Please
Deb, you kind of mentioned, you know, having that outlet for people where they, you know, were stuck in their own bubble, and Katrina, you talked about the autonomy for our guests and our audience members, but that was also a part of the immersive process. Was, you know, we looked at what platform to use, and Zoom's a wonderful platform to connect with people, but you as a participant have very little purchase on what you can do, and so Deb in particular went and found a great platform that we're using. It's a conferencing style platform, but it gives the participant quite a bit of choice in where they go and who they talk to and how they interact with the space. So it's not just one of us putting someone into like a breakout room or something, but rather allowing them to make this journey on their own, which is going to make it a unique experience for each audience member, and in turn for our performers, because it is that different story every time.
Mm-hmm.
We needed something when we were like first searching for this software. We needed something that would universally translate, because we had, you know, during this time, so much new technology has been thrown at us. You know, everybody's had to get used to using Zoom and StreamYard and all these things that, you know, we just needed to find something that universally could be understood. But we knew that we didn't just want Zoom because it didn't give people, you know, the autonomy to do what they want. We had to assign people to break rooms. We had to like curate their path, you know, and if they, Katrina's character is the bartender. If they didn't want to talk to the bartender and they wanted to go talk to somebody else, most people,
it never happens. The bar is always full.
Her room is always full, to be fair. But let's say that did happen. We didn't want to force somebody in there. You know, they can go enjoy and they can move on. So the software that we found is actually a software that we've had to kind of hijack just a little bit. I mean, it's kind of the best way to explain it, because it was not designed for our use at all. But that's what we do. We think outside the box. So this software was originally designed for like trade shows. So you have a 2-dimensional map. You can invite your guests in, and then each room or each booth, as it were, you know, if you were doing a trade show, each little booth on the map can fit a certain number of people. So they're automatically like little mini breakout rooms. You just have a map that allows you to move through it, right? So when we looked at that, I'm like an avid board game player. I have an entire wall and an entire shelf of board games, you know, and when Todd mentioned, we kept going down this path of, it's almost like a Clue board kind of thing. So that's kind of where we developed that everybody instantaneously, everybody has played Clue. in their childhood at some point, or seen it, or seen the movie or something. They understand the concept of, oh, I'm looking at like this mansion, and all the rooms are labeled, and I can move around to all the different rooms. So it helped the education factor of, which helped them feel more comfortable immersing themselves. They know that they had the ability to move from one room to the other whenever they want, and now they're in control, so now it's one step deeper than just a video conference.
And it's a beautiful map. We worked with the graphic designer to come up with exactly what we were looking for. And since then, Deb, in all of her talent, has taken on kind of our map building for some of the further games. And we've had such a hit within the conferencing platform that we've been working with, that they are now coming to us, but to Deb more specifically, to help build some of that richness into their layouts as well. So it was all part of that immersion to make sure people were really feeling like they were being sucked into it. And I think we've done a really good job. I'm proud of us, team. Way to go.
Hey. That's what we like to hear. I love to hear people going, do you know what? We did good. That's great. I love it. We need that positivity. That's fantastic. So, I mean, I take it you've been getting feedback from users of this, and what sorts of things are you all hearing from them so far? So we've had some of that interactivity that Katrina's had, and I suppose they're believing it. It's plausible that these people are real, which is fascinating. But are you hearing anything else from people who've given it a try?
Before you just said it's great to hear positivity. Before we go down that road of positivity, sure, let's just go to the dark place when we started this, sure. Because we came out of the gate and we had 2 or 3 months of development. A writing team of 12 to 15 people, all the new technology, our performers. We have what do we have? We have double performers, so 20 performers. That were part of this because we were double cast. So we had this pretty massive team heading into it, and we were so proud of what we developed. And we got out there, and the response was, and that was such a learning experience for us, because we had taken all of our passions and we had poured them into this, but we didn't have a clear direction of who our audience was, I think. Right off the bat, we wanted to hit on escape room players, because we had these incredible puzzles that were put together, and each performer had their own puzzle to lead the group through. And we had similar to a BuzzFeed quiz that before the game even started, you could go and find out what kind of adventurer you were and what library you were associated with, and then that led you. For us, that was kind of a litmus test of how puzzly they were, because some puzzles were more difficult than the others. So it would help place them in the right areas of the game so they could start with a harder puzzle if they were gamers. And then we had the second half of the performance now, and even then there was a bit of a murder mystery element to it without the murder. Let's keep it positive. But they had this performance opportunity to also be a part of it and decide who was the nefarious bad guy. And what we found out is that theater goers who were coming for that side of things were very frustrated with the games, and escape room players were frustrated that they had to suddenly interact with performers. And so our audience was giving us these really mixed reviews of the game. So of course we were like, oh no, and that's I think where Deb was talking about the many iterations and the different things that we went through to get into where it is now. And part of that was just focusing in on our audience. And we've done that. And since then, one of the reviews that I heard that I was so excited to hear was, I really enjoyed myself, but moreover, I've forgotten how much I missed human interaction. And to have that be something that they pulled out of the experience, that meant that our characters were real, that our storyline was engaging, and they took that 90 minutes and really were immersed, which was what our goal was. They were really were immersed in this experience to the point where they felt they had made friends through the characters, and they felt like they had made a genuine human connection through a virtual medium. So I was excited to hear that.
the creation of the, we did have so many escape room players interested in the concept because the escape room community has just kind of blown up with virtual ideas, with virtual concepts. A lot of the brick and mortar escape rooms have pivoted to the GoPro style, where you have, their attendant, their employee wearing a GoPro and streaming live, and they go through and the players just have to tell them, okay, pick this up and now do this and now unlock this, so you have to act through a medium. There are other escape rooms where, it's kind of gone point and click, where it's almost all video game. The VR space obviously is really turning up the heat right now because more people are starting to get VR, but that's still probably, a few years away before it's real commonplace. So, we wanted to try to make something as well, knowing that we had this audience that have now come through and tried this and not quite had a perfect experience in the first iteration, right? Because it was too immersive theater-y, right? It was too dramatic. It was too much conversation for them. So that's kind of why we decided to now create an escape room as well. So we, the secret library, like Todd said, it gives us the opportunity to tell so many stories. So there's always another story to tell, right? So we are doing the next one. It's called Escape Atlantis, and it's actually a prequel to the original experience, but it's very escape room. It's 60 minutes. It's you and your team of up to 8 people. And there is one attendant, one character that's there with you, but they are not intrusive at all. They will send you some hints when they think you need it, and that's about it. They otherwise will leave you alone and maybe run some technical components, run a video here or there. So yeah, we're actually launching that this weekend. So we're actually hoping that appeases the escape room community a little bit more.
Not just appeases, we want to excite them. That's what we're doing.
There we go. See, this is why he's the producer and I just call the coding and whatever.
But the great thing about the escape room being a prequel is, for those that did want a few more puzzles and did enjoy the original experience, they can go and they can see how it ties into the show. And on the back end for us, the performer that is going to be running the game, by and large, are performers that are doing the other experience. So they also have that rich backstory of the secret library, and we have a shell company called Delphic Solutions that is the corporation that is funding the research for the secret library. So they have this whole history of Delphic Solutions as well to play off of, and they're going to be able to then infuse that into the clue giving and bring those performances through the escape room without being heavy-handed with it.
Wow. Okay. And Katrina, how is this for you as a performer? These interactions with people and keeping up with the knowledge that you must have to have of the games and things. I mean, do you find it must be quite tiring to have this online presence that's not you, but you're maintaining it as well as maybe your own? Like, how is all of that for you?
Maintaining is a generous word.
Okay.
It's another layer if someone wanted to explore it, but usually it stays within the experience itself. It's just, kind of a little Easter egg in a way if someone happened to look it up. But it's not, I'm not suddenly a social media manager or anything in that level. I find there's something like very invigorating about like being kept on your toes. And it's that while, yes, we have this kind of treasure trove of knowledge and backstory, you kind of just get to say yes and in the moment. It's very improv, and whatever is kind of given to you is a gift that then you're going to run with that. There was one show, this was right before Christmas, and I sing a couple songs in the intermission and or the interval, and one of the other characters in the chat, I was singing, what are you doing New Year's Eve? And one of the other characters who is in the story frequents the bar a lot. He was like, oh, I don't have plans. And so then I decided to seize upon that and that, and then formally ask him out. And then that became a whole story for like that we got to filter in. And there's another character that day who's playing my half brother, and so he got to jump in and be the overprotective half brother.
Wow.
And so there's something like so exciting and thrilling and a little bit terrifying always, because you're like, where is this going? We don't know. But the wonderful thing is, you know, I fundamentally trust everyone I work with. It's a really talented, really supportive team. So you know that like no matter what avenue you go down, they're going to be there, like not only like supporting you, but having the merriest time too. And so there's something really gratifying in that, which kind of keeps each performance very much alive and of that moment too, because it is, while it is, you know, paying homage to everything that was created before, there's new creation happening in that moment.
And I think, Katrina, you are, I hope that you can see or hear the personality and the charm that she always brings to her character through what she's saying today. But she really is a fan favorite. And we get so much positive feedback about her singing, of course, but also they really connect to Katrina's character, Maggie, on a different level than they do for many of the other performers. So when you asked about feedback, there's a lot of great positive feedback about Katrina in particular.
Oh, fantastic. And so do you think this has broadened out your audience? Because I mean, with what you were doing before, you seem to be US wide, but this must be global now. Are you getting people from all over the place?
It is. We've gotten people from all over the globe. Literally, we did a 7 a.m. performance on our time for a group that had people in Hong Kong, was it, Deb? So we are reaching parts of the globe that you know, we normally wouldn't be able to. Our challenge is trying to keep enough performance times available for people to join us from other places, quite frankly, because it is a game that is social. It's an experience that's meant to be with a good number of people. And while you get a very personal experience if there's only 3 people there for the show that night, it also can be a bit overwhelming when there are more performers than there are audience members. So for us, you know, a really great number is between, you know, 30 and 40 people in the game. It provides a lot of avenue for what Katrina's been talking about, which is that changing directions and unique experience for our guests. But it's hard to have a European time slot that's enjoyable at 8 p.m. And then we're having to do a matinee, and so we'll get a few people from over there and maybe a couple from here, but we're trying to find those times to concentrate the guests so that it's a better experience for them.
Yeah. And earlier, Deborah mentioned board gaming, and I'm a real lover of cooperative board games. And so I was wondering, is the escape room online, is the secret library, is it the sort of thing where everybody has to cooperate and you all lose or you all win, or is it just everybody for themselves? How does it work?
Yeah, so it is a collaborative experience. It's a minimum of 4 people is what we suggest, and you can have up to 8 people. So far in our early testing of it, everybody seems to kind of stay together. And all 4 to 8 people attack one puzzle at a time collaboratively. It is designed so that way you can split up. You know, we had one escape room player come in the other day, and she manages an escape room in New York City. And she came in and she was like, okay, I want to divide and conquer. Let's have you 2 go here, you 2 go here. But everybody else was just a little too nervous. And they didn't all know each other very closely. So they all stuck together and she kind of guided them through it. But I think that when you get a real, passionate team that has done this many times, that, when I owned my escape room, there were some groups, my brick and mortar was at the beginning of the escape room phenomenon. back in like 2014. And only towards the tail end did I start seeing like avid players who have done every single one in town. They travel nationally. They always have to do them, and they know how to do it. And they go in there, and everybody has a plan. My husband and I were kind of the same way. I would go in, he'd go in and search for everything and bring all the pieces to me. And then I would sit there and just analyze every single piece. And then it's like, you've got a plan, right? So it can be done, broken up like that, but ultimately it is a simultaneous or a collaborative experience. Mm-hmm. We have been talking about actually, for some groups that are bigger than 8, we can kind of do a competitive side where we have 2 games running at one time, and it's a race the clock kind of competition. But we haven't yet played with that, but it is always an option. We're staffing up and getting ready to do it. So we're excited for the first group that actually wants to compete.
Cool. Great stuff. And do any of the characters mislead anybody? Are there any sort of plants, or are they just purely good information? Or are there any plants in there that might be a bit misleading? Like, do you make it hard for people? Do you have different difficulty levels for people?
Is it difficulty, or is it playing with them? I think that's the real question, right?
So generally, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I think we have some red herrings built in, but this is where, and I'm going to, Deb, not to cut you off, but I do want to hear Katrina's aspect. Now, I know that I've had to sit in, I've played multiple characters now as kind of the understudy for the show, but I don't live and breathe them as well as some that are more dedicated to their performance. But I know that there are nights that a performer will come in and say, I want them all to suspect me tonight, so I'm going to do everything I can to be suspected. Or tonight, I'm going to send them all to this person. It's not the right person, but I'm going to send them all to this person and really cast a shadow of doubt on them. So I think there's a little bit of that ribbing between the performers that also keeps it fresh for them. But Katrina, have you ever been suspected? I mean, your character?
The funny thing is, often my character gets suspected because she's quite optimistic and naive in a way. And so then I get people who are like, she's too nice, she's too optimistic, this must be it. But then I also, one of the other actors who I actually, she was my music director once in a show in Orlando. So we've known each other for years. But she decided to make me the top suspect, and her line, she was like, I don't even think that's her real accent. I think she's faking it. And so I have people who would come into my room, and this guy, I just remember this guy popping in and go, spell color. I was like, what is going on? Because it was a test of whether, because they're like, we're not sure. She comes in, she's singing some Beatles songs. So there is like fun lines of, and that, we all know kind of where the story is going, but we can take a little detour and encourage guests to take a detour along the way. And because we have this kind of sense of play and trust with each other, we can definitely go down that route. But the man who popped in and said, spell color. I was fascinating. But yeah, so we can kind of, it's a helpful, you can nudge people in a certain way, and especially and it can help with like the pacing as well, as you're like judging, how clued in they are and kind of the experience they are trying to gather. You can shift them this way and that, so that they are going to maximize their time and kind of keep things fresh and enjoyable.
And to that end, Deb, you also, while you're running things behind the scenes for each game, you have the opportunity to interact with the guests, and she's a bit mischievous herself. So oftentimes she will help guide things just in the chat interactions between the other performers or the audience. So it's always a new experience, but yeah, there's definitely some misleading times.
I mean, there are sometimes too that, not only are the character, our actors creating and we're creating on the fly, but the the participants. And this is exactly what we hope for. The participants are creating on the fly. We have heard some outlandish conspiracy theories, like during the intermission when Katrina's character is playing. Sometimes they'll have the opportunity to just chat with each other and be like, well, I think this is about to happen. And you're like, what did that have to do with anything? Where did you get that from? But the fun part about it is you yes and it, right? So one of the characters will pick up on it and be like, oh, that's a really good idea. You might be onto something. Come find me later and we'll explore that. So it just keeps giving us the opportunity for everybody to kind of have fun with it,
And we have modes of, we separate all of the performers and the technicians for the show. We have a feed where we can talk to each other privately. So it's almost like our backstage area. So you can be like, hey, heads up, this guest is going down this direction, like lean into that. And so that, we can keep each other on board as we do this.
Or sometimes it's even, I just made, it can also be like, hey, I just made a backstory, this character suddenly decided that she, played chess with this other character, whatever, and you're like, I don't know where it came from, but sure. And now suddenly you need to make sure the other performer is aware that you have this relationship in case the participants go over there and ask her about it.
And that's something that I had a friend who came over and watched as we were running the backstage side of things, or the back end side of things. And they were like, oh, this is almost as exciting, almost as interesting as watching the experience itself, because he said, I had no idea, first of all, that the performers, who I keep talking about how great they are, but they really are, because they are multitasking like you can't believe. They are running, first of all, they're acting, like that's their first job, but then they're running puzzles and helping to guide guests. They're having to think on the fly as the guests change things. They're having to run their own technical elements, which is in and of itself sometimes a challenge, but they're also keeping this conversation going in the channel behind the scenes. And so they are just killing it. But as he's watching them roll with the punches and us change out different technical aspects throughout the game and talking about it, and then just our own frustrations as humans when something doesn't go right, and you're like, no, he was like, this is amazing. You should self-tickets to watch the backstage experience.
Is there an avenue then for a behind-the-scenes experience for people who've completed it at some point?
I don't know. Put your producer hat on. We'll figure that one out. Yeah, maybe we could live stream something. That would be fun.
Oh, that could be fun.
I feel like we would still end up with like 2 chats going on. There's like the on-stage chat, the public behind the scenes, and the private behind the scenes.
Well, it's even reality TV is not reality, right? So you kind of have to create another whole experience. I don't know. There's a lot of work there.
So point people towards, if anybody's listening and they fancy having a go at this, point them towards where should they go to sign up to do this.
Paula, first of all, you say if anybody's listening, they better be listening. Come on, you're not doing this for yourself, right?
That's true.
Yes, it's just for me. This is my family's podcast. This is how we communicate during quarantine. So they can come and find out about the experience at secretlibrary.io. That's .io, not .com. And there's an opportunity there to take a look at all the different experiences that we have. We did have one for Christmas where we dealt with Krampus and the lore of that with the Secret Library. It was a super fun show, and I'm so sorry that it's seasonal, because it was a lot of fun every night, even for us to watch what was happening, because it forced us to really create new experiences each night. Sometimes, as much as we say the audiences can change the story, sometimes they do sit back and watch, and so oftentimes we have to really drive their participation if they're not being particularly interactive. But with that one, we had the opportunity to really delve into some improvisational chops. And then we have a couple with the new escape room that comes out next week. And then we have a couple of new other experiences on the horizon. They can find all of that at secretlibrary.io.
Brilliant. I think, Deborah, were you going to say something there?
No, I was going to jump in real quick about the about Krampus. That show, it's amazing. Kind of, we went through such a learning curve with the original experience, right? We went through, and now that we've done it and everybody is so comfortable with it, you know, with running it, like we keep kind of driving home that we keep finding new things, and that has now informed the subsequent games. So like for instance, there is an ability in the platform. You know, you're looking at a clue board, right? And you're looking at all these little pieces on the board, all these little avatars that are your character and all the performers and everybody, right? Well, you can watch them kind of jump around, right? You go into this room and then you jump over to this room and then you jump to that room, right? Well, we've realized that people that was very intuitive. And there was something kind of fun about watching people kind of chase each other a little bit. You know, everybody trying to, I really want to track down Katrina because she has some important information. Oh, wait, she went to this room. Go get her, you know. So there's like this chase element that we were actually able to integrate as a real chase where you had to chase down Krampus. We said, okay, Krampus had just got here. You have 1 minute. Everybody bounce around. Go get him. You have to corner him, you know. And it ended up being one of the most like adrenaline-filled kind of minutes for in a virtual game, you know, like we're all just everybody that does this, you're generally sitting back in your office or your living room or something, maybe a glass of wine, but now you're like clicking around and all of a sudden for 1 minute, you're really, really excited, right? And we're really, you know, trying to keep an eye on those things that people really enjoy because we can exploit them a little bit and kind of integrate them into future experiences, which I'm really excited for. You know, like we thought we had covered everything with the original experience, but it feels like there's just always more. You know, it's just so untapped. It's great.
Wow.
And it's funny, we keep talking a little bit like a politician where we're talking about this thing that we love so much, but we have to keep skirting the issue because there is mystery involved and because there are puzzle elements that we don't want to give away the endings to. And so I'm listening to us talk and I know exactly what we're talking about, but I'm sure to the listeners, it sounds a little bit like we're avoiding answers or not giving you the full story. And we're not because we want to keep it a mysterious element. And so I do apologize for the double speak or the confusing, it all makes sense in our brains, but it may not come across vocally right now.
Great. And so is there anything else that we haven't covered yet today? Is there anything anybody wants to say? I mean, you're all working your socks off by the sounds of it on this, but you sound like you're having a blast, which is really positive to hear. But is there anything else you want to put out there for people?
It's always it's like having a menu that's just so big. Like, what do I say now? What do I order? I mean, I think that as a producer, I have to say, please come and experience this for yourself.
Yeah.
And that is to keep our performers working because they are the top in the biz and they are just working so hard, having a great time. But we'd love to have the opportunity for them to continue. But more importantly, we really do believe that we've hit on something that is universally enjoyable and an opportunity for some escapism and a date night or whatever else, a good way to see family that you can't be with. And we're so proud of it and we really enjoy what we do so much. We want to share that with everybody. So please, please, please check it out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Boss Man summed it up pretty well.
Yeah, couldn't say anything better than that.
Great. Yeah, I feel like this is the sort of thing that over the coming years, researchers, academics and things are going to look at this kind of innovation and how people like you have just taken this by the horns and just done something with it, and created out of, something really quite dark and difficult for the world. And so it's an amazing achievement. So well done. And I'm really looking forward to giving it a go myself. It sounds really hilarious, fun, exciting, brilliant. Thank you all so very much.
Thank you.
For this.
Thank you, and let us know when you're coming because we're excited to show you.
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah, and I suppose if there's an opportunity to, if anybody listening to this does give it a go, just make sure you let somebody know, because that would be lovely to know about that.
What do you say, Deb? Should we set up a discount for listeners?
I was just thinking that too.
All right.
That's so kind. Thank you.
Absolutely.
So we'll send you over a special code just for your listeners, and you can include that in your byline so that they have a chance to experience it for a discount.
That's so generous. Thank you all so much. That's wonderful. Yeah. Hopefully it'd be good if it'd be great if we could get a little Audiovisual Cultures team together to come and do it. That'd be good. So Todd Zimmerman, Katrina Michaels, and Debra Beardsley, thank you all so much for joining me today. It's been a blast. Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you so much. All right.